In between Elendil and Aragorn there were 32 kings of Gondor, who ruled for the first and second millenniums of the Third Age. However, not all kings were equal, some being better than others. In this video we go through a list of top 7 best kings of Gondor and find out what made them so great leaders. Number 7. Eärnil II. At first only a general in Gondor's army who served his second cousin, King Ondoher, Eärnil enters the annals of the kings in 1945 during the invasions of the Wainriders and Haradrim. Although Ondoher and his two sons were killed, Eärnil managed to crush the Haradrim in southern Ithilien before turning north, ambushing and routing the Wainriders. Now a national hero, he claimed the throne of Gondor, and the Council of Gondor awarded the crown to him. His claim even surpassed that of Arvedui, the heir of Isildur. Showing his wisdom and virtue, Eärnil sent a great navy north to help Arvedui against Angmar. However, it was too late. By the time the force landed in Lindon, Arthedain had fallen, and Arvedui was dead. Still, the Gondorians, alongside the elves of Lindon and Rivendell, managed to destroy Angmar and eliminate a possible threat to Gondor from the north. Unfortunately, the Witch King escaped to Mordor, from where he and the other Nazgûl captured Minas Ithil in 2002. Eärnil was unable to retake the city and died shortly after. Even before becoming king, Eärnil was wise and brave, as he had proven during his campaigns in 1945, but after receiving the crown, he demonstrates his virtue by offering Arvedui help. However, Eärnil also had a darker side to him. He was ambitious, as when he had the opportunity to become king, he took it and refused to back down, even though Arvedui's ascension to the throne would have meant that Arnor and Gondor would have been reunited. Number 6. Taranon Falastur. In the first centuries of the Third Age, Gondor greatly expanded its borders. This expansion was largely thanks to its 11th king, Taranon. Whilst he was the king's heir, he had occupied the position of captain of the hosts and had incorporated many lands into Gondor. In the west, the provinces of Lamedon, Ringlovale, Morfond, and Anfalas, and in the south, the land of Harondor and many coasts in Harad. In other words, when Taranon was born, Gondor looked like this. At the time of his death, Gondor looked like this. Yes, quite impressive. But the reason as to why Taranon is on this list is not because of the expansions, but the way he achieved them. Although some provinces needed force in order to be incorporated into the kingdom, at his court Taranon Falastur was a diplomat. He used words, not war, in order to bring people under his rule, even being willing to give up his own happiness to achieve this. Speaking of, let's talk about Falastur's infamous wife, Queen Beruthiel. Beruthiel was a black Númenórean woman living in an inland city south of Umbar. The reason for her marriage to Taranon is unclear, especially due to the enmity between Gondor and the black Númenóreans. Given Gondor's expansion south and the fact that Beruthiel was described as nefarious, solitary, and loveless, and that she and Taranon were almost completely opposite to each other, the marriage was likely political, an attempt on Taranon's part to repair the relationships between Gondor and the south. Saying all of this, Taranon would have been higher on the list, had his attempts not failed spectacularly. A few years after supporting Beruthiel, he exiled her back to the south, even going as far as to remove her name from the Book of the Kings, and just 20 years after his death, Gondor and the Black Númenóreans were at war again. Number 5. Eldacar. Unlike all other kings on this list, Eldacar, also known as Vinifaia, was only half Gondorian, as his mother was one of the Northmen. After the death of his father, many Gondorians, led by his cousin Castamir, rebelled against Eldacar, and after 5 years of fighting, Eldacar was forced to flee to Rovanion, the home of his mother's people. Castamir had usurped the throne and declared himself king. 10 years later, Eldacar returned at the head of an army of loyalists and Northmen and personally killed Castamir, reclaiming his crown. From all of this we can see that Eldacar possessed both the wisdom of Gondor and the bravery of the Northmen, and the fact that after Castamir's death no other rebellion occurred during his region shows that in the end Eldacar did manage to prove himself as the rightful heir of Anarion. And if not for him, the bond between Gondor and the Northmen, and later between Gondor and Rohan, wouldn't be nearly as strong as it was. Number 4. Tarondor. Tarondor's story is a sad one. He was once the son of Minastan, the younger brother of King Telemnar, but during the Great Plague of the 17th century, all of his family died because of the illness. As a result, Tarondor became king of Gondor and inherited a realm far weaker than all of his ancestors have had to deal with. In fact, it was stated that if any enemy had attacked Gondor at that time, it would have fallen. This was a crisis, and Tarondor acted at once, being forced to take harsh choices. He recalled all of Gondor's outer garrisons to defend its heartland. Tarbad and all of Enedwaith, Harondor, and the Watch on Mordor were all abandoned as a result. With his borders secured, Tarondor turned his attention inward, removing the capital from Osgiliath, which had been devastated by the plague, to Minas Anor, where he planted a new white tree. From there he reorganized Gondor and began the long process of slowly nursing the kingdom back to health. He also had the longest reign, exactly 162 years. Tarondor's importance to Gondor's survival is often overlooked by fans, but if not for him, then the kingdom would have been in a much weaker position upon the arrival of the Wainriders and would not be able to help Arnor. In the end, that didn't happen, largely because of his leadership. Number 3. Meneldir. Meneldir was the last man to be born on Númenor, being the son of Anarion and the grandson of Elendil. After the death of both Anarion and Elendil in the War of the Last Alliance, Isildur, now king of Arnor and Gondor, committed the rule of Gondor to Meneldir before heading north. It was important to keep in mind that Isildur wasn't planning on relinquishing Gondor. No, he planned to rule from Arnor as the High King of both realms. All of this came crashing down when Isildur and his three sons were killed in the disaster of the Gladden Fields. With their deaths, Arnor fell in the hands of Isildur's youngest son, Valandil, a boy of 30 years. Meneldir finally saw his chance and declared Gondor to be an independent realm, abolishing the High Kingship. Under his rule, Gondor centralized and firmly established its borders. It was also during these 156 years that the Watch on Mordor was established. We actually know extremely little about this time. As for Meneldir himself, he is described as a man of courtesy, far-seeing. He is also opportunistic and unwilling to submit to Valandil, a child, when he was the older, more experienced, and had an adult heir of his own, and ruled the stronger realm. Whether the separation of Gondor and Arnor was a good thing or not, I'm unsure. In the long run it was not, but the kings of Arnor, at least the early ones, have proven themselves as not that great rulers, as their realm constantly declined without any external foes. Nevertheless, Meneldir forever changed not only Gondor but the whole world. Number 2. Romendakil II. Born during the Golden Age of Gondor as the son of Kalimakil, the brother of King Narmakil I. Because Narmakil never married, it was decided that after his death, the crown will pass down through Kalmakil's line and eventually reach Minalcar. However, because both his uncle and father were lazy, Minalcar was appointed as regent of Gondor and ruled in all but name. As a regent, Minalcar's main concern was in the east. Beyond the Sea of Rhûn, the Easterlings were growing ever bolder and began to raid Gondor's territories. More concerning to Minalcar was the fact that some of the Northmen would actually ally with the Easterlings in order to gain power or wealth. Minalcar acted at once. He gathered a great army and marched east. In between Rovanion and the Sea of Rhûn, he defeated the force of Easterlings and burned their encampments on the shore of the sea. During the battle, one of the Northmen princes, Vidugarvia, who called himself King of Rovanion, joined Gondor and forged a close friendship with Minalcar, who after this victory took the name Romendakil II. Upon returning home, Romendakil fortified the western shore of the Anduin and built the Argonath, depicting Anarion and Isildur. He adopted a Northman-friendly policy, inviting many of them into Gondor, receiving them in its armies, and most importantly, sending his son Valacar to live among them. This will lead to the birth of Eldacar and the Kinstrife civil war. As a ruler, Romendakil had everything a good king should have. He was wise, brave, kind, vigorous, and prioritized Gondor's interests, but not at the expense of other people. Number 1. Hermendakil I. Out of all the lesser kings of Gondor, this one is by far the best. Born amidst the war between Gondor and the Black Númenóreans of Umbar, Kiriaher succeeded his father to the throne after his death in battle and began his region by gathering a great army and a large navy to lift the siege of Umbar. This he achieved in 1050 in the Battle of the Harnen, crushing the Haradrim and almost wiping out the Black Númenóreans. With this victory, Gondor occupied all the coast as far as Umbar and forced the kings of Harad to pay tribute through gold and slaves. Thus, Kiriaher became Jarmendakil, the South Victor. Simultaneously, the kingdom reached the height of its power, from the Celebrant and the borders of Greenwood to Umbar, and from the Sea of Rhun to Farbat and the Guaflow. All lesser men, Easterling, Haradrim, or Northmen, acknowledged Jarmendakil's power and dared not take up arms against him. From the moment of Jarmendakil's victory, an age of peace and prosperity began for Middle-earth. He was instrumental in Gondor's dominion, and its decline began almost immediately after its death. Thank you for watching, I really hope you enjoyed it. The script was surprisingly hard to write, and the recording was an absolute nightmare. At this point I am still new to a YouTube channel, and you can see that, in the sense that the audio quality isn't that great, the visual quality could have been better, the thumbnails aren't that attractive, but I'm doing all I can to improve. Still, I have big plans for the channel and so many video ideas. If you made it as far into the video, then I want to ask you something. What would you want to see on this channel? Other rankings, lore breakdown of characters or events, more content on main stories, or even niche content? Feel free to comment down below.